Hi, I'm Wayne Tuttle, and welcome to Chasing Legends. Welcome back to Chasing Legends. I'm Wayne Tuttle. I'll be your host again. We're back in production. That's great, yeah. I know people like the live and stuff, but it's nice to be back in this. Please go down, hit the subscription button, hit the notification bell, leave a comment. If you want to comment, we always check them out. We read them, respond when it's appropriate. And go to the About section. You'll go down there, it'll say like videos, playlists. At the end, it'll say About. Go there, you'll see represent.com. You'll see the shirts, Dutch Hunter Rendezvous, Legend of the Superstition Mountains, black, gray, long sleeve, short sleeve. We don't make a dime off of it. What very little we do accumulates, and then we get a shirt, and then we give away shirts for free. So there you go. So I'll be done. Trevor's back. But because of certain protocols inside, he's kind of in studio, and we're kind of starting to take this and put it back together and get these things rolling. So it's nice. Now everybody can complain about the music underneath and the lighting and stuff. That before nobody was seeming to complain. I mean, I'm sitting there with an iPhone and just doing just this terrible version of Chasing Legends and Lives, not even wiping my lens. Nobody complains. Except for Frank. Frank complained. But nobody's complaining. Trevor comes back in. You start using thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of equipment. And then we get complaints. So go figure that. What do you think, huh? So, but back to the editing and everything else and nice production. And I'm back in 4K. So you get to see, I aged, right? From last week. I don't know. Yeah, I aged like 20 years suddenly. Anyhow, we're back again. Back into the story mode. Number of things we're going to touch upon, and we're going to start catching these up. And I watched the commentary, and I watched a lot of comments, and there's stuff I've added to what I want to do. So we will start rolling those, getting into some specifics and telling some specific stories, some of the legends, the myths, back into the bark notes, and kind of carry you through the summer as we're working on other things. But for right now, I want to take you back. And this story came from someone and making comments, and I misunderstood the comment. And I thought they meant kind of like, because I was having a hard time reading them and they would scroll and disappear. And I thought they were kind of asking something along the lines of, or that what I thought I read was, when was the first time you went out, or actually, someone was digging for the Lost Dutchman Mine, someone thought they had found it. Because there was a lot of trips where you went with people, and I went with various sort of people that thought they were in the area and were looking for it. And in this matter, this falls between a couple different videos I've done. There was one I did where I was very young and we went in the mountains, and it was with some friends of my dad's. And then there's one later where we were up in LaBarge, and I believe we went up into kind of the LaBarge area, but I don't know how deep. But this triggered that, and I started thinking about it because I thought it was the same trip, and then I realized no, it was a different trip, and I don't remember a lot about it. Now I'm going to say it's either 76 or 1980, could be 78. It's somewhere in there. It's sometimes really hard to kind of nail these down because you remember the time period and you're trying to think of kind of like, well, what car did we have, or what this, or something that. I know there was only very few, not even a handful of trips I went in the mountains with my dad. For him, the family, the job, church, those things took precedence. He wasn't going to miss probably Sundays at church and that type of thing over going in the mountains most of the time. So there were those rare occasions. He also had a very bad back, and for many, many years he couldn't really sleep on the ground. It just got worse. And then once his back was bad, he almost needed to be in traction. So he had this very severe problem he'd come out of the Korean War with. And because of that, because he had, I think it was around 20% disability because of his back. But when it gave him problems, it was literally severe. And anyone like myself that's had a problem with their back during a period of time, you can't walk, you can't move. It's just constant extreme pain all the time. It's just like, it's like a toothache through your entire body. And it can cause a lot of numbness and just non-feeling or non-working parts in your extremities. So he had those problems, so the trips, especially the hiking type stuff, we were very limited on. But I remember this trip, which I'll go into. We went in down by the Peralta Trailhead, and we went up in through down by Bluff Springs and kind of into the LaBarge area. And I don't know how far we walked. We walked a good part of the day. Took in packs. I was very curious because we took basically sleeping bags, packs with clothes and stuff, water and stuff for like that day, but we didn't take anything in for extended. But when you're a kid, you don't think of that stuff. You're not thinking of the planning stuff very much. I knew we were supposed to go back in for a few days, and this was a rarity getting to go back with him because it was like odd. Like, wow, he's actually going to... Because it was usually that once in a blue moon, there were the family camping trips, and then there was baseball. We would always go to baseball. So... And he didn't take that much time off to do that stuff. His time off generally was go back east to spend with family. So this was kind of a rarity. I have no idea the backstory to a lot of this because I just know I was there and how young I was. We hiked in, we got to this spot. It wasn't a very open area, but you could see the tents. Now we're talking again the canvas tents, the period of canvas tents. And this is those teal and yellow Coleman tents. I know there were several of those. We owned one. I had one for years that I used. The musty old canvas tents with the zippers and stuff, but they were shaped kind of not teepee but triangular style a little bit. They were 4 to 6 men. Their canvas had a canvas floor, and there were a bunch of these set up. So when we got to the camp, it was quite a few people. There was quite a few tents and a lot going on. Now I wasn't the only younger person there, kid. I don't know if like I said, the dates. I don't know if I was just before or I just early teens. But there were other people around my age. I didn't know anybody, so I kind of hung around my dad a little bit once we got there and all. We got in, he went off, they went to check something out. My job for while we stayed there was, with the other boys, we went and got firewood. We broke up firewood and stacked firewood. We put wood on the fire to keep it burning. Not necessarily we were admonished if we got too big of a flame, but the idea was to have a fire constantly going because they were cooking and doing things. And then the other thing was they had these white jugs, and they were they were plastic, but they were white plastic, kind of squared. And they had opening. They were kind of not jerry cans, but bigger but they held about 5 gallons of water. And there were a bunch of those, and we would take this old tent pole or some kind of pole, steel pole, one of us on one end, one on the other end, and we put them on our shoulders, and we'd walk those out to where they were digging. They were actually digging. Now, I only went out to that spot a few times to take water or whatever else they told us we had to go, because we were literally we were the menial labor. So we'd walk the water out, put the water down, take anything back we were supposed to take back. So which meant we took forever to go out and then ran back. When we got there, the best way I can equate it was... You know those movies you see, like the prison thing, and they're in the rock quarry, and they're just beating on rocks and digging at stuff, and it's, you're just like, oh man, they're just like breaking rock down. It was similar to that. It was in a kind of ravine, arroyo. It wasn't very sloped or anything that I can remember, but it was rock walls, and there was a lot of rock, and they were digging, and they were pickaxing, and they had sledgehammers. And there were always 7 or 8 people there, and they were you just heard them doing that stuff. It's a bunch of men in their 30s and 40s, probably early 50s. Nobody's wearing a shirt. They're all sunburned. They really stink and smell bad. Some of them had their shirts tied around their heads. It was just kind of almost really kind of stupid looking. They were working away at it. Who knows what they were, but they were digging a pit. Wasn't into the side of the mountain. It was like a pit, and they were digging it down, and it was kind of going a bit of at an angle, whether they meant to or on purpose. First time I saw it, I mean, this is so long ago, I would say they could crawl in and out of it. They didn't need help getting in and out of too much. It was probably 4 or 5 feet deep. By the time we left, it was maybe 8 or 9. They weren't making a lot of progress, in other words, for all the work. And I believe people were like into the evening. They had lanterns, and they were out there kind of keeping it up as much as they could, as long as they had. They'd been out there before us. Obviously, all the tents were set up, and they had quite a thing. I took it my dad had went out because he knew some people there. He went out to lend a hand. And I think additionally it was getaway, because he drank beers while he was there, because he liked drinking beer, and I remember he smoked cigarettes, which was probably one of the first times I ever saw him smoke a cigarette, which later I learned was always odd. Once I started smoking and we'd go golfing, we get on the golf course, he'd get a couple beers, which he didn't really drink around the house anymore. And when he drank at the house, it was usually 7 and 7s or Bacardi and Coke. But he never really drank beer at the house. It was a rarity for him to have beer in the fridge. But there he was drinking beers, and he was smoking cigarettes. He was bumming cigarettes and smoking cigarettes. So I think it was kind of like getaway thing, the guys thing, like poker night. But he got to go do something. Just in one of those little anecdotal stories. Anybody that knew him is watching this. A year or two ago, a couple of years ago, we're sitting talking one day, and I asked him a question. I said, because I knew he had quite the capacity. I'd never seen him drunk, and I'd seen him drink. In fact, he was notorious for getting me drunk when I was young and underage. But I asked him, what was the most you ever drank in one sitting? And he didn't even hesitate. He said, well, there was a time I had to drive these guys to Michigan, and I think I bought 2 or 3 cases of beer, and I drank that on the trip. I didn't sleep. I just drank beer, and we didn't have time. I didn't have time to stop for food because I had to get back for work. And I said, so you're telling me you drove all the way to Detroit, drove all the way back, you drank 2 to 3 cases of beer, and once you got back, you just went to work? And he said, yeah, I wasn't drunk. And I said, how many, I'm thinking how many beers are a case. And I'm just thinking, didn't you have to pee a lot? He said, yeah, I had to go to the bathroom. But he said, no, I don't think he said, it just helped keep me awake and stuff, which you think is the opposite effect. Very matter-of-factly, like he could remember it. And I can't remember. I wonder if I shot video of that. But I think he gave me he was talking the cases, but I think he told me the exact number of beers, like 54 or something. I drank 54 beers on that trip, and I didn't sleep, but, and then it was like, you got back and you went to work. Did you go sleep? Did you lay down for an hour or two? And he's like, no, I got back and took a shower and went into work. So the capacity was there always. Anyhow, kind of funny anecdote. So we're out there and we're doing that. And because he had this back issue, it really screwed up his back. So basically what he had to do is we had to leave while this was going on. Now, like I said, I have no idea what they were digging, why they were digging. I couldn't probably take you back to the exact spot, because the last couple of days I've thought about it a lot, trying to think, is there anything I could trigger to say, okay, I know we were here. I don't remember anything. I remember walking in and getting there. When we went to leave, someone had packed supplies in. And they were there with a bunch of horses, and I think there might have been a couple burros. But they had brought in water and a bunch of supplies. So they were being supplied, and they were staying out there for an extended time. We were going to leave, and we were walking out with whoever was packing. And we walked and kind of followed them for a while, and then we took a break and let them get the lead, because you're constantly dealing with the horses in front of you and the flies. That was another thing. That camp was full of flies. They had a hole they dug, probably 4.5 feet deep. And you could go there, go to the bathroom, and then you're supposed to throw some dirt in it all. But with everybody not really cleaning up and everything else, during the afternoons and stuff, that place was like just buzzing with flies. It was horrible. I do remember that. You tried to keep the tents, everything zipped up, because once the evening came, it was pretty mild and nice out. But I remember the flies. It was just terrible with the flies all over you. You're just like, it was miserable. So you always remember the miserable stuff, right? There's nothing exciting. They're digging a hole. We don't know why they're digging a hole. Never asked. I never asked about it again. I don't think I asked on the way home. I didn't really care. I had no clue. And you have to remember, at this period of time, while I'd read several books and I had knowledge of what the Lost Dutchman's supposed to be, I'm not a Dutch hunter. I'm exploring the mountains. I'm more out there just as a kid, exploring and kind of listening to stuff and sucking things in. I can't tell you who's who. I never paid attention unless it was on a rare occasion of someone we met more than once. And I would have sat around and talked with them, or I was on my own, which then my focus was in there more. When I was out with anybody else, I didn't have any clue who anybody was. So I always say I could have met people, but it wasn't anything significant. And anybody who was a longtime Dutch hunter or someone like that put in the way of, I think I would have remembered Bob Ward or an Andy Sinbad because of his accent, because he had a bit of a thick German accent. But I think I would have remembered them. But then again, I don't know if I really would have, because I think they would have just blended in with everybody else you'd run into. So I can't say I did, and I can't say I didn't, because I just don't have any recollection of who these people were who came in and stuff. And when they had camps, I'm sure there's people from all over. There was someone, veteran guy, that met with someone that sold someone something, and then they ended up doing something. Who knows? So we packed out, we hauled our gear out, followed the horses out. Now, the only thing I'm wondering, I don't know if Ron or Jesse or Josh ever watches these. If they do, they can remember. Trevor can remind me, is I got to ask Ron, is when he was packing, if he kept books of who the people were and stuff, and if he kept good records. I don't know if it was, could have been Archie Johnson, could have been Bud Lane, it could have been the Donnellys, it could have been Ron. I have no idea who it was that was bringing the stuff in and out. And I've never thought in terms like that with some of those trips when someone had stuff packed in. I ought to check with everybody and see if I find some sort of record of them doing something at a certain period of time, and see if I recognize a name. And if I recognize a name, or I'm able to take a name and associate it with something, like, the church my dad went to or work or something, I'd probably know exactly the time period and kind of be able to focus things in. Just something I recently thought of. So there's that trip. Means, the reason you forget these things, and they kind of get way back there, and it takes someone to trigger something. Like, when was the first time you actually saw, we're out somewhere where somebody was digging for the Dutchman? And that would probably be it. I don't think there was, because that one stuck out. It reminded me a little of Killer Mountains, but there was a lot of people there. There had to be 15 to 20 people around that spot. There was a lot of people doing that, which I was kind of like, man, there's a lot of people out here. And they were supplying it and all. It seemed like a pretty big deal. I've never seen anything about it, but then it just fades into the memory banks, because there were other trips like LaBarge where, it rained and stuff. And there's the trips like where my dad met those guys I can't remember, Richard Rick or whatever, probably 78, 79. I remember certain other trips because things happened. And there was a little more of an instance of a memory. This was one that, until someone asked something, I was like, oh, that's right, yeah. But there was nothing I could pull from the trip other than a bunch of middle-aged men without shirts digging for no apparent reason. There's no reason to have a memory of it. It's just kind of like every other time you went. And you have to remember, there was multiple trips in December, January, February, maybe even March. So those 4 or 5 trips that I start making in, as they accumulated more, a lot of those trips are very similar and the same. There's a number of trips Randy and Wright and I make, and I can separate a number of them, and there's a lot that is hard for me, because I end up making 1 or 2 trips into, and a third trip, then suddenly into one trip, and I have hard time separating them. And I think he would probably even still now too, and those are only 10, 15 years ago. Well, these are even farther back. We're talking 30, 40 years. So it's really hard sometimes to keep things separate. I've been trying to, and looking at the videos and keeping track of things, trying to kind of look at things. Unfortunately, I didn't keep diaries or journals or logs. I think in 1976, 78, even 1980, 82, 84, that I think that I would be here right now and still into this and doing that? No, that was just something in that moment. You're not thinking of what you're going to be doing a year from then, or if this is what you're always going to do. I don't think I even had at any time during that period, I ever thought anybody I knew was going to find the Lost Dutchman, or I would continue, or I was going to find it, because it just wasn't on that radar like that. It was like I was still trying to get familiar, and it wasn't probably till the 80s that I started getting a lot more information and things started processing different, because I've been to places and it was becoming more recognizable, the landmarks and stuff. So some of these trips do come to me, and when I do get them, rather than try to write it all down, this is so much easier. So I kind of think it over a bit, kind of see if there's anything I'm missing or whatever, see if there's anything, photographs or anything I could find. But back then, cameras were not expensive, but they just didn't haul cameras around everywhere. He had, it's funny, we still have the film camera here. We went through the 8mm footage, and there's so little of that. That would have been so cool if he would have taken film footage of that stuff. But at that point, he seemed to have zero interest in doing so, because I've run across a lot of cool stuff, but nothing like up in the mountains like that. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed the story. It's kind of a neat story. To me, it allows me to put in perspective that first trip and knowing where they were. I think there will come a time I'll start thinking it over and looking at, where it could have possibly been. See if there's anything. There has to be a pit or a hole in that spot still. I wouldn't think they would have filled it in. So that spot still has to be there. And who knows how far or how long they dug there. I have no clue. And I could draw a big circle in the area, which there's probably more than one big hole, knowing how things were in the 70s and 80s. But it would be interesting, and like I said, finding out if there was any way I could figure out who packed, but so many people were packed in and out. It might be, again, you're just kind of throwing leaves in the wind and just watching them blow away and not getting anything. But there it is. Welcome back to us, the production, the value, everything. Welcome back to the United States of America, Trevor. Nice to have you back. Nice to be able to kind of do stuff in this, the audio and everything set up and doing nice. This Friday, I'm going to, and I've been making the list of a lot of the commentary and questions. Some things might become Chasing Legends that people ask, because I might be able to do something in a Chasing Legends format. Some stuff I might just do on Friday Live as we're getting everything spooled back up. We'll do a Friday Live and try to get everything to look good, mic me up, and kind of like answer those questions in the commentary a lot of people had. So, and I'll have the Bearded Wonder with me to basically shoot off some of the commentary and questions being asked. So maybe we can do an hour or so of that, catch all that up, so we're kind of like free rolling again back into the normal situation and more normal stuff. So thanks for watching. I hope everybody is like healthy and happy and so forth and doing well. I know it's hot. Yesterday was about 114. Today is supposed to be about the same. So it's not getting better. It's just going to be sustained for a couple months or so. Remember the rendezvous in the first weekend of November at the Don's Camp. We'll be having more information. We'll put something out about that in July probably or so, or August. But we'll start kind of putting the dates in and started letting people know the build-up. Our guest speaker at that time, still, he has not said no, but he actually volunteered himself, was Mr. Jesse Feldman, the author of The Dutchman's Trail. So that'll be very interesting, and we got a few other things we're able to bring. Every year we always try to bring something else into the rendezvous to make it a little bigger, badder, and better. And this year there's a few ideas we had, and we put a little money into those ideas. So we're hoping that there'll be a lot to go, a lot to do there. So thank you for joining us. Until the next time, take care of yourself. And always remember, I'm Wayne Tuttle, you're not. And this was Chasing Legends.